The Maya civilization has long fascinated historians, archaeologists, and ordinary people with its majestic pyramids, complex calendar systems, and powerful dynasties that ruled the jungles of Central America for centuries. Yet beneath the towering stone temples and intricate glyphs carved into limestone walls, there lurked darker aspects of society that many have only recently begun to uncover. The Maya were not simply builders and mathematicians, they were also deeply spiritual, bound by a worldview that blended life and death, gods and blood, sacrifice and taboo. To understand them fully requires venturing into the shadows where ritual and secrecy shaped their everyday existence. Dark rituals and hidden taboos formed the backbone of Maya culture, woven into their politics, their religion, and even the way they interacted with their environment. While the ruins inspire awe, the secrets that lie buried within them reveal a world that could be as terrifying as it was brilliant. Archaeological evidence shows that the Maya saw life itself as a constant negotiation with the supernatural. Every crop planted, every war fought, every new king crowned was believed to require spiritual approval from gods who demanded offerings in return. Among the most shocking aspects of Maya ritual was their obsession with blood, both human and animal. Blood was considered the ultimate sacred fluid, a vital force that connected mortals with the divine. To the Maya, offering blood was not an act of cruelty but of cosmic necessity. Kings and queens pierced their tongues, ears, and even genitals with stingray spines and obsidian blades, letting drops fall onto bark paper that would then be burned, sending smoke upward as a bridge between realms. These acts were not hidden but central to public ceremonies, reinforcing the idea that rulers served as living intermediaries between their people and the gods. But beyond the public spectacles, darker and more hidden rituals also took place. Human sacrifice was a reality in Maya life, though it was not as frequent as later Spanish chroniclers claimed. Still, it carried enormous weight when it occurred. Captives taken in war were sometimes painted blue, symbolizing their role as an offering, before being led up the steep steps of a pyramid. Priests would stretch the victim across a stone altar, and with a razor-sharp obsidian blade, cut open the chest to remove the still-beating heart. The sight of blood pumping out onto the temple steps was believed to re-energize the gods and ensure fertility, rain, and prosperity for the people. In other instances, sacrifices were carried out in sacred cenotes, the natural sinkholes that dotted the Yucatan Peninsula. Victims, both adults and children, were hurled into the depths along with offerings of jade, gold, and pottery, believed to appease Chak, the rain god. For the Maya, life and death were intertwined, and the gods demanded constant nourishment to keep the cosmos balanced. Hidden taboos extended into daily life, shaping what was allowed and forbidden. Certain foods could not be eaten except during special ceremonies. Sexual practices were tightly controlled, with procreation tied to ritual calendars that dictated when couples could engage in intimacy to ensure cosmic harmony. The Maya also placed heavy restrictions on who could touch sacred objects, who could enter certain temples, and who was permitted to speak specific words in rituals. Breaking these taboos risked not only social disgrace but also spiritual punishment. Many of these restrictions were enforced by the priestly class, who wielded enormous power, not only interpreting the will of the gods but also instilling fear through secret knowledge. The role of the shaman priest was shrouded in mystery, for they claimed to travel between worlds, communicating with spirits and ancestors through trance, hallucinogens, and dream rituals. One of the more unsettling aspects of Maya spirituality was their fascination with death and transformation. Skulls and bones were often used in ritual spaces, both as reminders of mortality and as powerful symbols of regeneration. Archaeologists have discovered caches of bones buried beneath temples, sometimes arranged in intricate patterns. In royal tombs, rulers were buried with jade beads in their mouths, symbolizing breath and rebirth, but alongside them, sacrificial victims were placed to serve in the afterlife. These practices reveal a worldview where death was never final but part of a cycle of renewal, where even human suffering was absorbed into the cosmic order. The ball game, a hallmark of Maya culture, also contained dark undertones that outsiders often overlook. While it was a sport, it was also a deeply spiritual performance symbolizing the eternal struggle between life and death, day and night. Courts were often built in alignment with celestial patterns, transforming every match into a cosmic drama. Some evidence suggests that the losers, or in some cases, the winners, were sacrificed after the game, their blood feeding the gods as part of a ritualized conclusion. To modern eyes, the idea of turning a sport into a death sentence is horrific, but for the Maya, it was an honor, a way of merging human fate with divine order. The use of hallucinogens in Maya rituals further highlights their pursuit of altered states of consciousness. Shamans would consume mushrooms, fermented drinks, and inhalants made from crushed seeds and tree resins to open pathways to the spiritual realm. These substances were believed to dissolve the barrier between the human mind and the divine, allowing visions of gods, ancestors, and cosmic truths. Such practices were often secretive, performed in caves, seen as entrances to the underworld, or hidden chambers within temples. For the Maya, entering trance was not recreational but sacred, a means of accessing hidden knowledge and maintaining balance between worlds. Caves themselves were regarded with deep reverence and fear. Seen as wombs of the earth and gateways to the underworld, they became important sites for rituals involving offerings, sacrifices, and bloodletting. Archaeologists have discovered entire chambers filled with offerings left untouched for centuries, including pottery, jade, and the remains of sacrificed children. These sites were taboo to ordinary people, accessible only to priests and shamans who dared venture into the darkness. In these subterranean spaces, rituals that would horrify modern observers took place, reaffirming the Maya's belief that the gods of the underworld required constant appeasement. One of the more disturbing aspects of Maya society is the evidence of ritual cannibalism. Though debated among scholars, some records and archaeological finds suggest that flesh from sacrificial victims may have been consumed in carefully controlled ceremonial contexts. This was not done out of hunger but out of a sacred obligation, a belief that consuming the body of a sacrifice could transfer divine power or maintain cosmic equilibrium. Whether symbolic or literal, the notion adds another layer of complexity to the rituals that defined Maya spiritual life. Taboos also extended to the body itself. Deformities and modifications were not seen as negative but as markers of status and spirituality. From birth, Maya parents would shape their children's skulls by binding them with boards, producing elongated foreheads that mimic the appearance of maize, a sacred crop. Eyes were sometimes crossed intentionally, and teeth were inlaid with jade or filed into points. These practices blurred the line between the human and the divine, suggesting that to be closer to the gods required physical transformation. Yet for all their sacred meaning, they were also bound by strict rules. Only the elite could undergo certain modifications, and crossing those boundaries risked severe punishment. War itself was deeply ritualized, and captives taken in battle were among the most valuable commodities. Warriors sought not only to kill but to capture, for live prisoners were the fuel for sacrificial rites. The rituals surrounding warfare extended to its very planning, with divination and astrology guiding when and how campaigns were launched. Victory was not merely a matter of military might but of divine approval, and the rituals that followed, often culminating in the sacrifice of captives, reinforced the idea that human blood was the price of cosmic order. Even the Maya calendar contained hidden taboos that governed life at every level. Certain days were considered dangerous, times when ordinary activity was forbidden, and people refrained from planting, traveling, or making important decisions. These days were thought to be vulnerable points when the veil between worlds thinned, allowing malevolent forces to influence human affairs. Priests guarded this knowledge carefully, charging rulers and commoners alike for guidance, ensuring that their power remained unchallenged. In studying the Maya today, it is easy to romanticize their achievements in astronomy, mathematics, and art. But the shocking secrets that emerge from their rituals remind us that brilliance and brutality often walked hand in hand. The same civilization that tracked the movements of Venus with astounding accuracy also spilled human blood to ensure its rising. The same people who built cities that still awe the modern world also cast children into sacred wells to ensure rain. To the Maya, there was no contradiction. The universe was a delicate balance of creation and destruction, order and chaos, and human beings were both participants and sacrifices in that eternal drama. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, they were horrified by what they witnessed and often exaggerated accounts of sacrifice to justify their conquest. Yet the truth is that Maya rituals were deeply ingrained, rooted not in cruelty but in a worldview where the survival of humanity itself depended on offerings to the gods. Hidden taboos and dark practices shaped a society that saw the sacred in every drop of blood, every celestial movement, every carved glyph. They left behind not only towering temples but also chilling reminders of how far human beings will go to connect with the divine. Even now, the jungles of Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras conceal caves and temples that hold more secrets. As archaeologists continue to unearth hidden chambers, murals, and artifacts, the picture of Maya spirituality becomes more complex. Their rituals remind us that human history is never simple, that alongside innovation and beauty lies darkness and taboo. For the Maya, the path to the gods was paved with blood, smoke, and sacrifice, and in their shocking secrets, we see both the depth of their devotion and the haunting cost of their belief. 1. The Maya worldview centered on balancing life, death, and the divine. For the Maya, the universe was not divided into clear lines of good and evil but was instead a cycle of constant balance. Life and death were seen as parts of the same cosmic wheel, with both states necessary to maintain harmony. Their gods were not purely benevolent, they could be nurturing but also destructive if not properly appeased. This worldview explained why rituals of offering, sacrifice, and taboo governed every part of life. Agriculture, war, childbirth, and even sickness were understood as spiritual negotiations with supernatural forces that required human participation. The Maya believed that humans were co-creators with the gods, tasked with ensuring the continuity of the world through blood, prayer, and ritual. To them, ignoring the demands of divine forces risked plunging society into chaos. This philosophy made dark rituals and taboos not mere superstition but essential acts of cosmic survival. 2. Bloodletting rituals by kings and queens as sacred offerings. Blood was considered the most precious offering, containing the life force that connected humans with gods. Rulers were expected to lead by example, demonstrating their devotion through painful acts of bloodletting. Kings would pierce their tongues with stingray spines, while queens often drew blood from their tongues or genital areas, catching it on bark paper. Once collected, the blood was burned, with the rising smoke believed to carry prayers to the heavens. These rituals were public spectacles, meant to inspire awe among the people while legitimizing the ruler's divine right to rule. The act was not viewed as torture but as an honor, showing willingness to suffer for the well-being of the entire community. Relief carvings and murals vividly depict these scenes, emphasizing the sacred link between royal blood and divine favor. Through bloodletting, rulers reaffirmed their unique role as intermediaries between mortals and the supernatural world. 3. Human sacrifice practices, including heart extraction on temple altars. Perhaps the most infamous Maya ritual was human sacrifice, often carried out on the steps of towering pyramids. Captives, usually taken in battle, were painted blue to symbolize their fate as divine offerings. At the appointed moment, priests stretched the victim across a stone altar. Using razor-sharp obsidian blades, they cut into the chest and removed the still-beating heart, lifting it skyward to the gods. The body was sometimes rolled down the steps of the pyramid, an act both theatrical and symbolic. This gruesome spectacle was not mere cruelty, it was believed to renew the life force of the gods and ensure rains, harvests, and cosmic balance. Sacrifices often coincided with major celestial events, such as eclipses or the rising of Venus, further linking the act to cosmic cycles. To the Maya, human life was the ultimate currency in the eternal dialogue between humanity and divinity. 4. Cenote sacrifices of adults and children to the rain god Chak. Sacred cenotes, deep natural sinkholes in limestone, were vital to Maya rituals, particularly those honoring Chak, the rain god. In times of drought, the Maya believed Chak demanded human lives in exchange for precious rainfall. Archaeological excavations in the sacred cenote at Chichen Itza revealed the remains of men, women, and children alongside jade beads, gold ornaments, and pottery. Victims were either thrown alive into the waters or ritually killed before being cast in. Children in particular were seen as powerful offerings, their innocence believed to appeal more strongly to the gods. These sacrifices were part of a larger ritual landscape where cenotes were viewed as portals to the underworld. By offering lives into these watery depths, the Maya sought to nourish the gods and ensure the cyclical return of rain. To them, survival itself depended on what modern eyes see as chilling acts of desperation. 5. Hidden daily taboos governing food, sex, and sacred speech. Beyond grand ceremonies, Maya life was governed by a network of invisible taboos. Food was not consumed casually, certain animals and plants were reserved for rituals or forbidden during specific calendar days. Sexual practices were carefully regulated, with fertility rituals dictating when and how couples could conceive to align with cosmic cycles. Sacred speech was also tightly controlled. Specific chants, words, and prayers were restricted to priests or rulers, forbidden for ordinary people to repeat. Violating these taboos risked both social shame and divine punishment, as the community believed missteps could anger the gods. These restrictions created a constant sense of surveillance, where spiritual rules shaped behavior at every level. They reinforced hierarchy, since only elites and priests could freely access sacred practices. While hidden from outsiders, these daily taboos ensured that even the most ordinary acts of eating, speaking, or intimacy were bound up with cosmic responsibility. 6. The immense power of priestly and shamanic classes in controlling rituals. The priestly class held enormous authority in Maya society, serving as interpreters of the gods and guardians of sacred knowledge. They controlled access to the calendar, divination systems, and ritual procedures, which made them indispensable to rulers and commoners alike. Shamans, often overlapping with priests, were believed to travel between worlds in trance states, communicating with spirits and ancestors. Through visions induced by fasting, bloodletting, or hallucinogens, they offered guidance on warfare, agriculture, and health. This monopoly on sacred knowledge gave priests both spiritual and political leverage. They could declare favorable days for war, predict celestial events, or justify a king's legitimacy. Hidden rituals performed in caves or secluded temples enhanced their aura of mystery, reinforcing the idea that only they could navigate the dangerous boundaries between human and divine realms. By controlling rituals and taboos, priests effectively controlled the destiny of the Maya civilization itself. 7. Ritual use of caves as portals to the underworld. Caves held deep spiritual meaning for the Maya, seen as openings to Xibalba, the underworld. These dark spaces became centers of powerful and often disturbing rituals. Archaeologists have discovered offerings of pottery, obsidian blades, and human remains deep within cave chambers. Some sites reveal evidence of sacrificial ceremonies where victims, sometimes children, were killed in near-total darkness. The Maya viewed caves as womb-like spaces, both nurturing and dangerous, where contact with gods of death and fertility could be established. Priests and shamans used caves for secretive rituals involving bloodletting, hallucinogens, and offerings of precious objects. Ordinary people were forbidden from entering, making these places deeply taboo. The echoing sounds, dripping water, and absolute darkness heightened their sense of mystery, convincing participants that they had crossed into another realm. In their worldview, caves were not just geological formations but living, breathing gateways to divine and terrifying powers. 8. Bone caches and skull symbolism in temples and tombs. Bones and skulls were not treated as mere remains but as sacred objects infused with spiritual power. Excavations have uncovered caches of human bones deliberately arranged beneath temples, sometimes forming symbolic patterns. Skulls were displayed in zompantli, or skull racks, reminding people of both mortality and divine authority. In tombs of rulers, skulls and bones often accompanied the dead, reinforcing beliefs in regeneration and continuity beyond death. For the Maya, bones symbolized transformation, linking death to fertility and rebirth. They also played roles in rituals, with skulls carved or decorated as sacred relics. This fascination with bones reflected a culture deeply preoccupied with cycles of life and death. Instead of viewing remains as final, they were incorporated into sacred landscapes as objects of power. The omnipresence of skulls and bones served as chilling reminders that mortality was inseparable from the cosmic order. 9. The Maya ballgame is a cosmic ritual with sacrificial outcomes. The Mesoamerican ballgame, played on courts with high stone walls, was more than a sport, it was a sacred drama symbolizing the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Players used their hips, elbows, and knees to keep a heavy rubber ball in motion, often reenacting mythological battles from the Popol Vuh. The outcome of the game was believed to influence cosmic balance, making victory or defeat spiritually significant. Evidence suggests that in some cases, losing players, or even the winners, were sacrificed at the end of the match. This act transformed sport into ritual, merging human fate with divine order. Ball courts were often aligned with celestial events, reinforcing their role as cosmic theaters. Spectators watched not just athletes but participants in a life and death performance where the gods themselves were believed to be the true audience. To the Maya, the ballgame embodied the fine line between entertainment and sacred sacrifice. 10. Ritual cannibalism theories as part of sacred ceremonies. One of the most unsettling debates surrounding Maya rituals involves the possibility of ritual cannibalism. Some Spanish accounts, though biased, describe instances where the flesh of sacrificial victims was consumed during ceremonial feasts. Archaeological findings, including cut marks on bones, have suggested the practice may have occurred in controlled ritual contexts. If true, this was not an act of savagery but of sacred obligation, a belief that consuming the flesh of a divine offering transferred spiritual power to participants. Eating even a small portion of a victim was seen as internalizing cosmic energy and maintaining balance with the gods. While not universally accepted among scholars, the possibility underscores the extremes to which the Maya were willing to go to fulfill their religious duties. For them, the act blurred the boundary between body and spirit, offering a shocking reminder of the lengths humans will take in pursuit of the divine. 11. Hallucinogens and trance states used for contacting spirits. The Maya believed that altered states of consciousness allowed direct access to gods, spirits, and ancestors. Shamans and priests consumed hallucinogens such as psilocybin mushrooms, balshe, a fermented honey drink, and inhalants made from tree resins or seeds like morning glory. These substances induced vivid visions, often described as journeys through the cosmos or encounters with deities. In these trance states, shamans claimed to negotiate with spirits, heal the sick, or receive guidance for kings. Ritual spaces such as caves or secluded chambers intensified the experience, with darkness and echoing sounds creating the feeling of crossing into another world. These ceremonies were not entertainment but sacred duties that required immense preparation and purification. By surrendering their minds to these substances, shamans bridged the gap between mortal and divine, carrying back knowledge that shaped decisions on war, agriculture, and religious ceremonies. The hidden world of trance reinforced priestly authority and spiritual fear. 12. Body modifications, skull shaping, jade teeth, crossed eyes tied to sacred identity. The Maya treated the human body as a canvas for expressing spiritual and social identity. From infancy, elites practiced cranial deformation by binding boards to a baby's head, elongating the skull to resemble maize, the sacred crop central to their mythology. Crossed eyes were deliberately encouraged by hanging objects in front of children's eyes, symbolizing divine beauty. Teeth were filed into sharp points or drilled and inlaid with jade and turquoise, signifying wealth and spiritual power. These practices were not merely aesthetic, they carried deep ritual meaning, transforming human appearance to reflect godlike qualities. However, such modifications were bound by strict taboos. Only elites could undergo the most elaborate transformations, while commoners risked punishment if they copied them. The altered body became both a spiritual offering and a social marker, blurring the line between human and divine. This obsession with reshaping the body reveals the Maya's drive to embody their sacred cosmology. 13. Warfare is a ritualized practice focused on capturing sacrificial victims. For the Maya, warfare was not solely about territorial conquest or political domination but also about fulfilling spiritual needs. Victories provided live captives who could be offered as sacrifices to the gods, a far greater prize than simple wealth or land. Battles were often ritualized, with elaborate war dances, costumes, and banners carried into the field to invoke divine favor. Warriors believed their success depended not only on strength but also on spiritual destiny. Captured rulers or nobles made especially prized sacrifices, as their blood was considered more potent in sustaining cosmic balance. The rituals extended beyond combat. Prisoners were paraded, humiliated, and painted before their eventual sacrifice in temples or ball courts. This intertwining of war and ritual meant that every battle was, in essence, a religious ceremony. To the Maya, spilling blood on the battlefield was simply the first step toward offering it to the gods above and below. 14. Astrology and divination guiding war, planting, and major events. The Maya were master astronomers, tracking celestial cycles with extraordinary precision. But their astronomical knowledge was not just scientific, it was spiritual. Priests used the movement of the sun, moon, Venus, and stars to determine when wars should be launched, when crops should be planted, or when rulers should ascend to the throne. They believed that cosmic events were direct messages from the gods, and ignoring them risked disaster. Divination rituals, including casting lots with maize kernels or reading signs in animal behavior, further guided decision-making. Kings relied heavily on priestly interpretations to legitimize their actions, ensuring that every major event appeared aligned with divine will. This dependency reinforced priestly power while instilling fear of missteps. Ordinary people also lived by these rules, avoiding travel or work on unlucky days. For the Maya, the cosmos was a clockwork of divine intentions, and human life had to align with its rhythms. 15. Dangerous calendar days where activities were forbidden. The Maya calendar was not simply a timekeeping tool but a spiritual map, filled with days that carried hidden dangers. Certain days were considered unlucky or unstable, when the veil between the human and supernatural worlds grew thin. On these days, ordinary activities such as planting, traveling, or conducting trade were forbidden. People believed that venturing out could expose them to malevolent forces or bring misfortune. Priests guarded knowledge of these taboo days and provided guidance to ensure compliance. For example, couples avoided intimacy during certain periods, while rulers delayed ceremonies if the calendar deemed the timing dangerous. These forbidden intervals instilled both fear and obedience, reinforcing the priesthood's authority as gatekeepers of cosmic order. By living within these boundaries, the Maya believed they were safeguarding themselves from chaos. Modern readers may view it as superstition, but to the Maya, observing these taboos was a matter of life and death. 16. Jade, gold, and blood as central ritual offerings. Among the Maya, offerings were not limited to human lives. Precious materials such as jade, obsidian, gold, and elaborate ceramics were essential components of ritual practice. Jade in particular held immense spiritual value, symbolizing life, fertility, and eternal breath. Priests buried jade beads in temple foundations, placed them in the mouths of the dead, or cast them into sacred waters alongside sacrificial victims. Gold, though rarer in Maya regions than in other civilizations, was also offered, representing the brilliance of the sun. Yet, above all, blood remained the most sacred offering, often combined with material treasures to strengthen the ritual's impact. These offerings were intended to nourish the gods and maintain the cosmic balance upon which survival depended. The combination of wealth and blood reflected the Mayas' belief that both material and life energy had to be returned to the divine. It was a cycle of reciprocity, costly and sacred. 17. Child sacrifices seen as especially powerful to appease gods. While all sacrifices were considered sacred, the Maya regarded children as uniquely powerful offerings. Their innocence and purity were thought to make their blood more pleasing to the gods, especially in times of dire crisis such as prolonged droughts. Archaeologists have found the remains of children in cenotes and cave chambers, often accompanied by rich offerings of jade and pottery. Some were ritually killed before being cast into sacred spaces, while others were thrown alive, left to drown as living gifts to deities like Chak, the rain god. The practice was chilling but deeply tied to Maya cosmology, where sacrifice was not cruelty but an exchange that secured life for the broader community. The grief of such offerings reveals the desperation of a people whose survival depended on forces beyond their control. For the Maya, the death of a few innocent lives was a tragic but necessary payment for rain and renewal. 18. The duality of Maya civilization, scientific brilliance and ritual brutality. One of the most striking aspects of the Maya civilization is the coexistence of astonishing intellectual achievements with brutal ritual practices. This was a society that developed one of the most sophisticated writing systems in the Americas, tracked celestial cycles with remarkable accuracy, and built monumental cities aligned with astronomical events. Yet, at the same time, they practiced human sacrifice, ritual bloodletting, and dark taboos that seemed shocking to modern sensibilities. To the Maya, however, there was no contradiction. Their scientific knowledge was deeply tied to their spirituality, and rituals, no matter how brutal, were seen as necessary for maintaining cosmic order. This duality highlights the complexity of human civilization, where brilliance and brutality often intertwine. The Maya remind us that cultural achievements cannot be separated from the darker elements that sustain them. Their legacy is both inspiring and haunting, revealing the depth of human creativity and devotion to belief. 19. Spanish conquistadors, shock and exaggeration of Maya practices. When Spanish conquistadors encountered the Maya and later the Aztecs, they were horrified by the rituals of sacrifice and bloodletting. Chroniclers often exaggerated the frequency and cruelty of these practices to justify conquest and conversion. They painted the Maya as barbaric pagans whose rituals proved the need for Christian salvation. While there is truth in the accounts of sacrifice, modern archaeology shows that these practices, though real, were not as widespread or constant as Spanish writings suggest. Nonetheless, the conquistadors' descriptions reinforced European stereotypes and justified the destruction of Maya temples and codices. Ironically, the same rituals that legitimized Maya rulers became the excuse for Europeans to dismantle their culture. This clash of perspectives reveals the deep cultural divide. What the Maya viewed as sacred obligations, the Spanish condemned as demonic acts. The result was both cultural erasure and the preservation of biased, though invaluable, historical records. 20. Modern archaeological discoveries that continue to reveal hidden Maya secrets. Even today, the jungles of Central America continue to yield new insights into the dark rituals and taboos of the Maya. Excavations in caves, cenotes, and temples reveal caches of human bones, offerings of jade and obsidian, and murals depicting bloodletting and sacrifice. Advances in technology, such as lidar scanning, have uncovered hidden cities and ritual complexes previously lost beneath the forest canopy. These discoveries confirm much of what ancient chroniclers described while also challenging exaggerations. They show a civilization both brilliant and brutal, where rituals bound communities to their gods in ways modern observers can scarcely comprehend. The secrets of the Maya remind us that beneath every great civilization lies a complex web of belief, fear, and devotion. Their dark rituals, once hidden in stone temples and sacred wells, now emerge to tell the full story of a people who lived in awe of their gods and the cosmos itself.